Hi, this is Brian Brady and David Bonnier on the Civic Pulse, episode 15, with my good friend Mia Henry. Mia, we're so excited to have you here. Let me read a little of your bio before we get started. Mia Henry is the founder and CEO of Freedom Lifted, which offers leadership development through online learning, training, and facilitation. With her unique and approachable style, Mia has created educational spaces and practical tools to support just and ethical leadership for hundreds of organizations and more than 10,000 individuals. Mia has deep experience in leading organizations committed to promoting justice and equity, previously serving as the executive director of the Arcus Center for Social Justice and Leadership at the Kalamazoo College, founding director of the Chicago Freedom School, and from 2011 to 22, she designed and led 29 educational travel tours to civil rights sites in the Deep South. We also got to work together at the MICFA Challenge when Mia and I worked on helping young people get involved in politics, and David was a board member then. So David and Mia, we are a day after the Trump State of the Union. And how are you both feeling? Mia, you first. The guest always has to tackle the hard questions.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to borrow something I heard a friend of mine say yesterday that really encapsulates the complex feelings I'm having these days. And she said she felt really scared and really lucky. And I think that's definitely how I feel right now. I'm feeling humbled because I believe that I thought I knew how bad it would get, and it has truly exceeded my expectations. And I thought I knew a little something about history and, could prepare myself at least mentally and have a decent analysis of what is happening as it's happening. But it's truly, there was a lot of friends of mine who were saying in the fall before the inauguration that we've been here before, we've got each other, we've been here before. And I do believe we have each other. And that's the lucky part. That's why I feel lucky of who my family is and who my friends are and how the trust that we have there and just kind of the realization of how much we are going to need each other for the foreseeable future. And I feel, but I don't feel like we've been here before.
Yes.
Actually,
David?
So yeah, that's where I'm at.
David,
Sorry.
How did you feel? No, I'm coming back to that. Yeah, I just want to say, David, are you feeling the same way?
Well, yeah, I'm feeling that there's just a lot of pressure, stress, tension because of the dynamics of the politics in our country and the socioeconomic challenges that groups are facing. So, how do you deal with all of that? Well, historically, we've had that throughout our history in our country. And so for me, everyone has their own way to do it. For me, it's just to go to work and do something. And I'm going to Ukraine in 2 weeks. I'm going to be there for 3 weeks. I'm going to Ukraine. I'll be there for 2 weeks. And I'm working on a program that tries to help the victims in Ukraine, particularly the combatants, children, and mothers who are separated from their husbands who have post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And we've identified a number of organizations, and we're putting Ukrainian veterans and American veterans together to try to do something about it in terms of training the psychologists that are needed and all the other pieces that are important to getting that challenge addressed, which is huge because the whole country is under enormous stress. You think we have it tough here, when we do, because things are falling apart from our perspectives, I think. But in Ukraine, it's even more dramatic, as it is in in Sudan or in in the Middle East, in Gaza. So yeah, I'd like, let's get to it and get this done. And I'm kind of hopeful, cautiously hopeful that there will at least be meetings between Putin, Zelensky, and Trump. Where that goes, I don't know. I have no idea. It's just a hard thing to solve. But each side has enough that they want that they've got to deal with the other sides. I mean, Russia has lost 200,000 people killed in this war, combatants. Ukrainian, about 100,000, 70,000 soldiers, and maybe 30,000 civilians. And then that doesn't even count those who were even seriously injured. So, and there's a lot still in captivity. So they both combatants, both Zelensky and the Russians, they want, those soldiers in captivity back. That's a big piece, as it was in Gaza, trying to get some resolve and an end to the conflict. So that's going to be really an important piece. And saving face for these leaders is unfortunately always a top priority. But it has to be dealt with. It's a real issue. And, Putin doesn't want to walk away. He's a criminal. He's a war criminal. He's a heinous guy. But he's got to have something to get out of this. And so does Zelensky, of course, and Trump is just consumed with it because he's so self-consumed with himself. So we'll see.
Yeah. Mia, you are I'm going to pivot a little bit more to domestic stuff because you're a historian of the civil rights movement. You've taken many trips there of the struggles for justice in this country for marginalized folks. But you say this feels different. What do you think we can learn from that period that can strengthen us now in fighting against the explicit racism coming from the White House? And the many other things coming from there. And then what is, like you said, just feels new, that we need new formulations and new models of resistance.
Well, I'll say that part first because I don't really it's not really that deep, my analysis around it being new. The new part is the role of money and technology in the creation and sustaining of an autocratic regime. I think that, so that's the new part. I mean, we've had autocrats. We have them all over the country, world now, and, Putin being one of them. And so we're clearly aligning ourselves with autocracies current and past. And so, the cultural resentment that they've used in order to consolidate power, that's the old part. The new part is that we have a deep, deep dependency on technology, and they have a lot of control over it. All of our money is not even real anymore, right? It's all computerized. It's all like, there's so much, even more trust. You have to have trust in an actual dollar bill. Now you have to have trust in the idea of a dollar bill being in your bank account. And right now, just the ability to kind of just wipe people out, wipe resources out from people is so simple. It's not that complicated to do. And so if anybody wants to do it, whether it's our current leaders who see the enemy within, or our global leaders who want to continue to undermine our democracy because it's already been used, right? Cyber attacks have already been used to sway our government.
Destabilize.
Destabilize and sway elections. That is going to continue to happen, right? And so this ability for, we don't really have two parties anymore. We have, a party that is in power, but really that we have a person or small group of people in power who are, whose party is compromised right? Like their values are compromised, and their sole purpose now is to protect those oligarchs. And then you have another party that's like, Democrats are really, to me, just completely rendered powerless right now. Not just like in the way of they're not in control of any of the three branches of government, but there aren't three branches of government. We don't even know if the executive will follow the judicial branch. Like at this point, I could see the Supreme Court making a decision and the Trump administration not following it. So it actually doesn't even matter what other parts of the government do. So the Democrats are very, what's the word I want to just...
disorganized will work for now.
Disorganized.
Not united. Yeah,
not united, like real functioning. They're not functioning. That's part of it. But they're also just, they just don't have any power. They're rendered powerless, I think. Even if they were unified, I don't know if they would have power. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So the role of, so Musk and all these people, it's just not just him. I mean, he's the richest person, but there's a lot of other really rich people but as well, who can
Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen. Yeah.
Right. And they can constantly impact elections. I mean, we saw that even in Chicago, how billionaires were donating to school board races, the Chicago school board race. They're doing that all over the country. So the money, and even if the candidate is weak, they can put so much money in disparaging and lying about the other candidates. They don't even have to prove that their candidate's good. They can just lie, about the other candidate. Those are, again, old tactics, but the resources that are available to use those tactics are kind of like, on the next level. And no one has any moral qualm about using those resources to do harm. So that is what, to me, feels very new. And then obviously there's a breaking of the heart, right? So David, you're talking about Ukraine, and you're talking about, just the realities of the people living through war in Ukraine and in Sudan and in Gaza. And those are so real. I mean, the human suffering is almost, too much to take in and be able to sit with and still be able to go to my next meeting or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just, it feels so hard. And I'm so glad that you are able to travel to and from Ukraine and be with people, in this moment. Yeah. And I come from people, I'm a Black person, I'm a Black woman. And I didn't just do those tours to do them. I did them so that I could pay honor and legacy to my own heritage of civil rights activism, right? Because both of my parents were involved with the civil rights movement, and my mom especially. And so my mom desegregated her junior high school, right? And in ninth grade, 14 years old, and dealt with a ton of psychological violence. Fortunately, no physical violence, but that wasn't the, different people experiences. So this my mom is in her early 70s. I mean, she is like, totally with it. She's watching the news. Her heart is breaking as well. And when she saw the way that meeting or that setup went of Zelensky in the White House, she texted me immediately. I hadn't seen it yet. And she saw it like live, I guess. She was watching it, live. And she was just like, I cannot believe what I just witnessed, and her heart is breaking because, and I'm not going to put words in her mouth, but I just understand the whole purpose of movement work in this country has been, we've always used the promises of democracy as the rationale for the movement, for movement. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I used to talk about this all the time when I invited people in to do social justice work. It's like, we are just trying to fulfill the promises of democracy for everyone, right? Regardless of identity in this country. If there's no more promise of democracy, right? Yeah. That's where to me, the fear comes in. And then that's when we talked later with my mom. She was just like, she was like, I just can't believe this is happening after all we fought for.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
She just couldn't believe it, because it's this the whole idea of America, even after being oppressed on so many different levels, right? We talk about the 5 phases of oppression in my work, Black people for sure, and we can name many, many different groups, and not to dismiss the diversity of peoples who have been oppressed in this country, but the exploitation, the marginalization, the psychological warfare, the cultural dominance, the erasure of our past, our languages, our and the violence against Black people, right? Through all of that, there's still this belief of Black people in this country because of the promise of democracy. Like King said, we just want you to do what you said on paper, right?
Yeah.
That's it. And now it's like there's not even any kind of pretense of trying to do what we said on paper. So I feel like I was saying we're going through an identity crisis as a country, right? And that's true, if we're talking about us collectively. But the leadership, I don't actually think they're having a crisis. I think they know exactly what they want. And a lot of us who believed in and were invested in a project of democracy, as deeply imperfect as it has been, I'm just saying, for me, I feel very, very destabilized.
Yeah.
That's that. I'd love to get your thought on this. That's what's most shocking to me about this period of time, is that the Elon Musk and the intellectuals behind them, whether that's Andreessen or Peter Thiel or Curtis Yarvin, they're anti-democratic and anti-constitutional. I mean, they really don't. They want a CEO government, which is basically an autocracy. And I wonder, a question I'll put to both of you here is, as we try to fight back, it does seem almost like Tai Chi, that the overreach is where we can win, but the Democratic Party still needs to form a core basis. So I think most Americans want a democracy, or they call it a democratic republic, but they're trying to actually erase the word democracy now, if you notice. And they don't want oligarchs like Elon Musk running it. He's not polling. He polls at about 25%, right? David, before we got on, you said the Democratic Party is too controlled by intellectual oligarchs. How do we start fighting back?
Intellectual / political oligarchs.
Political oligarchs. What do you mean by that?
Oh.
Well, these are the professional people that run these races and get these big contracts, whether they win or lose, to continue doing what they do. They're in these political shops, and it's the same people that have been running these things for 20 years, and they're very wealthy people, and they really don't have the heart of working people. It's not that significant to them. If it would have been significant, we would not have given away the working class to the extent that we have. The Democratic Party, I'm talking about. We've lost, half the workers that we used to represent, because they had it with us based on trade, based on other economic issues that makes their lives very, very, very difficult. And that runs across race, class, you name it. They're like, whoa, I've had enough of this. And that's when people like Trump can approach them and win them over on some other different issue, because they're not doing very much for working people either, as we know. So we've got to get more, listen, if you look at election day and you look at these maps of Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, and it's all basically red counties, right? And then there's the blue patches where the Democrats are, okay? But we can't operate and be successful if we don't have more votes coming out of those red counties. But we have no strategy to do that. I mean, those folks are, they depend on Social Security. They depend upon the Postal Service and the people that provide community for them through the Postal Service. They depend upon hospitals, and these are all things the Democrats historically have been reasonably good at. I mean, so what we need a really aggressive program to reach out to folks in these red counties throughout the country. And, we don't have to get them all, but we got to get a little thicker, deeper piece of that pie. And
But there's a lot
of bigger slice, because that's what Republicans have done.
Well, a lot of Democrats are winning where Trump won, though. That happened in a lot of places, and a lot of Democratic ideals passed ballot initiatives in red states, right? We know that. So it's that people are doing that. They are organizing locally. There's some great folks in Michigan, actually, who had been since 2016 working to unite, have a multi-racial working class folks, right? They don't think about it necessarily as blue, but they see it that they are, but they when it's time for elections, they're organizing people to vote Democratic, but the work they're doing is year round, right? To make sure that these folks see their common interest, right? As working people all abandoned, by the American economy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was very uplifted by the ballot proposals in a lot of the red states this last election.
And
it was one of the few things good that came out of that election. That was positive. But
and that the Democrats didn't have much to do with that. That's the thing. The big D Democratic Party was not moving those things.
Right. Well, that's
like when you talk to people in Missouri, they didn't, when they organized to raise the minimum wage and to have abortion be legal, right?
Right.
They were doing that on their own.
That's my point. They need a little bit of help from the party on these things.
Well, the party they accept it, but the party is not great at letting the people lead.
Yeah,
the party is also run by a lot of people in those shops that you're talking about.
And it's the worst. And it's the worst in large states like New York State.
Yeah.
It's terrible in New York State. The control they have and the exclusion that they have in their party structure. Well, that's got to change. We got a new guy now who's the head of the DNC from Minnesota. We'll see if he changes it. He ran on the promise that he would. A guy by the name of Martin. We'll see what happens there. But we've got to do things differently. If we don't do things differently, it's not going to get better.
Well, part of it is just seeing who's doing the good work and funding them, like giving them money to do it.
Can I flip this to the other side? Because I agree with everything you all are saying, but I also think there's this other piece of the equation, which is if you look at the electoral map, Cook County Democrats lost 10% of their vote. They still won, but they lost 10% of their voters. And you saw that in blue dot areas around the country.
That's my point. Oh.
But so I think there's an argument made, David, that there's a left-wing strategy around that Bernie Sanders speaks to probably in AOC better than anybody. Because Mia, when I talked to you before the election, you're a dual citizen. You reside in Kalamazoo and Chicago, and you vote in Kalamazoo. But you told me you thought Harris was going to lose before I did, because you were talking to a lot of people who were going to stay home that you thought should vote for the Democrats because of how sinister this guy in the White House is. What do you see that the Democratic Party needs to do for the left, for the I'll just call it the Bernie wing of the party? You could call it give it many other wings, but I think Bernie has the biggest constituency on the left.
I mean, that's I think one of the things, I don't know if we talked about it, but what I've thought about a lot was, because I mean, my residency is in Michigan. Let me just and that's where I vote, and that's where my home is, and that's where I'm, so I live, in Chicago sometimes, but I'm registered, I'm in Michigan, and I went to vote in person in Michigan. And that it was early voting. And so between, the feeling I got when I went to early vote, that's basically when I was like, oh, I don't, this people are angry who are coming to vote. They're angry. And angry people scared people voted for Kamala. Angry people voted for Trump. That's how I feel about it.
And you felt the anger in the polling place.
And I felt there was more anger in where I was than there was fear. And when I say specifically fear of what has happened, but not even knowing the extent, but fear of Trump's tendencies, his love of fascism and all of that, right? Mm-hmm. And all of the not just conservative ideals, because he's really not, he's kind of beyond any kind of value set, but his tendencies, right, as a politician. I feel like that's what people were voting for more than a belief or even coherent understanding of what the Democrats are for. I think that Trump, the anger was there, and Trump, it spoke to the pain that people are feeling. And so Michigan is a very good example, because there's, Michigan went for Obama both in 2008 and 2012, and then, Trump in both 2016. And then it went back to Biden in 2020, and then back to Trump in 2024 by, a clear margin. And there's a lot of people who voted for both Obama and Trump, and maybe even Biden. I haven't seen the research on that, but there are definitely a lot of people who voted for Trump in 2016 and who voted for Obama before that. And there's been research of what they said in their interviews, right, about why. So there's a good report about that. Folks are, disenfranchised, just like David said, and they're going to vote for whoever they think got their back, whether they have, whether they're saying they're being told that I'm the reason that they're not doing well, which are lies, right? Or immigrants are the reason, or money to foreign aid is the reason, or right, like the other is the reason why you're not doing well. It's not us. It's not the ones who are using your land, taking your, taking your the
owner class.
The owner class, right? And the ruling class. It's not us, it's them, right? It doesn't matter. He spoke to the pain, Yeah. And so I'm sorry, I got you asked me a very clear question, and I don't think I'm answering it, but I do have an answer. What was your question? What the Democrats need to do now? Or the Bernie
my daughter, who she voted for Biden, but her anger about Gaza almost kept her home. And I think there was a million or a couple million voters in the country who probably stayed home because of Gaza. And I think that that foreign policy imperialism piece. It is a tricky challenge for the Democrats, because they.
Yeah, I mean, so many people who identify, I don't know if they identify as Democrats, but vote Democratic, are not multi-issue people, right? They have particular things that they care really strongly about, and so they believe the Democratic Party will fight for those things. And so, unfortunately, something like Gaza, the issue in Gaza, came up as one of those issues. But to me, I struggled with that, because I am very much pro-Palestinian for decades, and I understood the anger at the policies that has resulted in the deaths of so many people there, and the displacement, and really the ethnic cleansing that's happening. And it was not strategic to not vote for Kamala Harris. Like that would be the strategic, but to best support Gaza would have been to vote for Kamala Harris, right? Not to stay home, obviously, and not to vote for Trump. And what I struggle with, then that's some American exceptionalism, was actually coming out of that. I'm going to stay home to show, my solidarity with Gaza. I don't know. I had not read any reports that Palestinian people were asking Americans to stay home. Right? If they were following the direction of Palestinian folks, right, I believe they would have voted, because I know Palestinian folks knew that Trump was not going to save them. So a vote,
Well,
staying at home is a
their
vote for
leaders
him.
were the Palestinian community, Arab community. Their leaders were Muslim community. Their leaders were divided on this question.
In this country.
Yes,
in
in
this
this
country.
country.
I'm not, but
They're
there.
much divided. So they would follow,
Yeah.
if they were following some of their own leaders. And, we have a large Arab American Muslim population in Michigan. And our candidate, who I thought was actually a pretty good candidate, Kamala Harris, one big mistake she made, she wouldn't separate herself
from Biden.
And Biden implicitly dragged our country, into that war by his inability to say no to Netanyahu.
Yeah.
And we provided the bombs that killed 45,000 people in Gaza. And we provided the intelligence. So we're, as a country, we're complicit in all of that. I think we are. And I think the Arab American and Palestinian communities were pretty outraged, as they should have been.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. But I don't think voting, and I've said this before publicly, is not the full of our politics. So many of the folks,
right,
and myself included, have done pro-Palestinian work and Palestinian solidarity work all the time. A vote is a strategic move. It is not organizing. Right?
I know it is.
It's not aid. It's just a vote.
It may be just the vote, but a lot of people died, and as you know, because you come from that background and that family, a lot of people gave their lives for that vote.
Well, actually, I always push back just a little bit on that. People didn't give their lives were taken. Right? So people didn't go in saying, take me so that my kids will be able to vote. No, white people killed them because they were trying to access the promises of democracy. So voting is one of those things, right? It's a very symbolic and central piece to that, but it's not all of it, right? The civil rights movement is about Black people being full citizens. And vote is part of that, but also being able to live here with dignity and respect and have access to the GI Bill and have access to student loans and have access to schools and be able to do so many things. So voting is one of those things. And the registering of vote, yes, white people killed us just trying to register to vote, but that's because of what it represented on a larger scale, that we would be full citizens. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and so
I do.
that to me is what the vote to me gets overemphasized in elections and becomes this thing where people feel like their entire politics has to be exercised, on display through their vote, through their one vote, right? And so you have all these people who don't do anything ever throughout the year who voted for Trump, right? Like some people who never voted before voted for Trump.
Yeah.
He organized the couch, right? That's what Joanne Reed
did.
talked about. He organized the couch.
Brilliantly.
And it's the same. There's a one vote, one person. It is not enough. Those folks are not doing things on a regular basis. They're not engaging with things, And so I think, yes, the vote is important, but it's more about what it symbolizes in a democracy. And it has to be used as one tool in our strategic canon of exercising our citizenship.
It is a tool, and as you know, both of you who came out of ICFA, democracy is a verb, and you've got to participate in a lot of different ways, as you articulated.
Exactly. Yeah,
but that's a pretty important one. The vote.
It is. The vote matters.
Well, yeah, clearly.
But there's a purity to some people take around voting that I agree with you. I just think people are not strategic, and it's almost like a purity test. Hey, we're running overtime, but I gotta get one more question in, because diversity, equity, and inclusion is being used by the right basically as almost a closet N-word. I feel like it's just a racist. It's not even a dog whistle. It's just a overt racism. To fire and eliminate positions. We saw the head of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff get canned basically for being Black, and the one woman in leadership get canned. Mia is on the front lines of diversity and equity and inclusion work. And it's not a perfect movement, but you've been brilliant on LinkedIn. I really hope people follow you because you're posting, when you post on LinkedIn, you really took to task corporate America in a recent post for its post George Floyd shallowness in embracing DEI and now quickly most companies throwing it overboard. What is the key to take the core values of diversity, equity, and inclusion and survive this moment of attack so that it can then rebuild and thrive later?
Yeah, I mean, there's the weaponization of the term has made it so that we're able to see now clearly who is committed to it on a deep level and who has been able to already integrate it into their values and just their ways of being. And I say that I work primarily with nonprofits and public libraries. I do not work in corporate. And I know that what DEI means in corporate spaces is a lot different than how it has looked in spaces where folks are working for people and not for profit, right? So I can't really speak to what's happening in the corporate space except from the perspective of a consumer. And then, so from that place, I'm just like, oh, we're seeing who performed DEI and who really believed in it and like actually made it part of, everything that they were doing and didn't like ghettoize it, right? Or make it an initiative, right? Instead of just a way of being, a core value of the company. And we're seeing people, companies that not always, but places that, care about workers and workers' rights and labor rights tend to be hanging on to their diversity, equity, inclusion goals because that's part of it. That's clearly part of it. So yeah, to me, it's unfortunate. I worry about it because it is being used as a slur, right? DEI is being used as a slur. And so much like thugs or, welfare queen and all these things, it's coded language. And a lot of people just, unfortunately, equate the term with like Black people, or Black adjacent, right? Folks who, of color, if they will, and those who are working in certain neighborhoods and for certain people. And so I fear that goes back to my fear, right, of just being targeted and for my family to be targeted and all of that, right? And so, yeah, there's a whole nother conversation I feel like we can have.
We need another show.
Yeah. But I appreciate the question, and I think I'm happy to engage with anyone on LinkedIn or my Substack as well. Probably is even better. To just really get into kind of the nuances and the repercussions, right, of how narrative work is impacting people in our politics.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
that's a good teaser. We're going to get you back for a deeper show. We touched on a lot of great topics. So thank you, Mia. You're a wonderful, brilliant person.
Yeah, thank you for having me
today.
Thank you for having me.
Great to see you, and we'll talk soon.
Keep up the good work. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Take care, y'all.